but we're in week 3 of build a website in 10 easy-ish steps, and we are going to be talking about types of websites and platforms, and we mean web platforms and not the shoes from the 1970s that are at risk of breaking ankles.
I would know about that.
Have you never ever worn platforms?
Yeah, it's an embarrassing story, which
Is there any
involves
photographic evidence?
I don't think so. No. I did wear platforms. It was to see the Harlem Globetrotters.
What?
Yeah, I wore a 1970s outfit to go and see the Harlem Globetrotters in the 1980s.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of.
So just to warn you as well, Neil is caffeinated to the max today, and so he has notified me that he might be a bit giddy, well, more giddy than usual tonight. So a quick recap: we did in week 1, we looked at audience, and the live is still up there if you want to look at that. In week 2, we looked at the goals of our business and the action plans. We kind of missed out the middle bit, but we just took the top and the bottom, basically. Like, what's our goal and how are we going to get there? And so this week we're talking about types of website and platforms, and we'll start with types of website. And so Neil sent me this lovely photograph. I don't know whether you want to explain it, Neil.
I love this image because normally it's a terrible story, and as Mandy says, I'm quite giddy. But normally when I'm running workshops, I always like to show this image, and I always kind of refer back to it as this is kind of the way that websites used to work in the olden days. And obviously there weren't websites back when this photograph was taken, but this is information storage and information retrieval. And the story goes, if you wanted to find out the information on the web from a website, you'd phone up, you'd speak to Jeff here. Jeff would run down the pile of card indexes. He'd pull out a card index, which would have, the website information written on, and then he'd run back to the phone and he'd read that information to you. And it's going to information storage and information retrieval. And that's all the information it's in those card indexes there. And the information retrieval element of it is, ringing up, Jeff running down, grabbing it and reading it to you. And that's the retrieval of the information. But yeah, I just quite like that image.
It reminds me of when I used to work in an academic library, and I was responsible for the library systems. And so the older librarians would talk about the card indexes of the olden days, and I couldn't really get my head around how they would have 400,000 cards and know the way around them when I was putting it in a system to help students find what they wanted. Do you know what I mean? Okay, so if we bring that kind of image of Jeff running up and down to find information up to the modern day, what we've got here is just a bit of a visual representation, because when we talk about websites, we know what a website is. We can get lost in lots of different terminology, but we just wanted to kind of give you a quick overview of what actually happens. So when you type in on your tablet or phone or laptop or desktop, wherever you've got, when you type in an address, say for example facebook.com, what happens is, and Neil will correct me if I lose the plot here, but what happens is basically the computer or the device attaches to the internet. It sends loads of packets along the line of the internet. It goes to the web server, which are these boxes in the background here. Those web servers might be in another country, so it might need to use a satellite to get to those. But basically, packets of information, these zeros and ones, binary data, is sent along in a split second to retrieve content, which is then brought back to your desktop and served to you. And served is a computery science word. Would you agree, Neil? Is that a good definition for you?
Yeah, no, that's good, because it is served, because it's served from the server.
That's right. Yeah.
And it's, you know, and what we've got when we have on our laptops or on our PCs or on our phones, we've got special software which allows us to engage with the internet. So we might have we might have Chrome, or we might have
Safari.
Safari, thank you. I was trying to remember what it is for a Mac. Safari, might use
Or
Firefox.
Edge.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Popular one. And so what that does is that interprets all those ones and zeros that are zooming across the globe, and then coming back to our screen, and that kind of then builds the website for us and shows it on screen. Mm-hmm. The website itself obviously is stored on one of those servers. If you're in Liverpool, it might be, in Edge Lane, because there's a bit of a server farm there, or it could be on a university campus, or it could be anywhere in the world. Mm-hmm. And all it is you're just remotely accessing that computer in a far and distant land. Using the Tinternet.
And that's why it's so frustrating when the internet's not working, because we start to get reliant on these pieces of information that, that we want to work, whether it's Google or Alexa or whatever it is. Okay, so there are a few different types of websites.
Yeah.
And what I've separated them into 4 general areas. So the first one is social. And social networks or social websites can include things like forums. It can include, if you think about Facebook, you can have Facebook groups and Facebook pages. You're in a Facebook group right now. You can have community groups. You can have discussion forums. You've got things like Reddit. You've got MySpace. Is MySpace still going?
It is, yeah, it is still going. Friends Reunited.
Friends Reunited was an old social network, yeah. And so I don't know whether, is anybody in the chat at the moment? I'm just wondering whether you know what all of these cubes are, because obviously we've got Facebook and YouTube down the bottom, which I think everyone would get.
Marion and Vicky in the chat at the moment.
Hello, ladies. So I'm just wondering whether you're familiar with all of these icons, because I think I could work them out all bar one. I don't know whether you can help me with that one, Neil, but from the top left, we've got Pinterest, which is kind of an online notice board site. It's massive.
Yep.
We've got Vimeo for video. Then we've got WhatsApp on the left again. We've got RSS feeds in the middle, which is a way of retrieving data. Then we've got, is it Viper? Viber, close. Then YouTube, Facebook, Insta, and Twitter along the bottom. Then we've got the first person, male or female, who's kneeling is Google Plus, which I think has died off a bit now.
It's died off now,
Yeah. I don't know what the line is.
I don't know line. I'm not familiar with it.
Ooh, right. Well, we'll have to find that out. And then we've got Skype.
Yeah.
And so these are all examples of social community type networks. Yeah. And the reason we're kind of giving you these explanations now is that you can decide what kind of website you want, you need.
Mm-hmm.
Over to you.
Oh, right. Okay. We also have e-commerce sites. Kind of a transactional site. So if you're purchasing something from, it might be, things like Interflora, or it might be, I was going to say, Uber Eats, something like that, along, Deliveroo. That's a very transactional kind of site. You've got your very high profile. We've got your profile. Sorry, Vicky, if you I'm not sure if the video seems to be working fine at our end. So Vicky just said she's just losing the video. So yeah, these are purely transactional websites. So e-commerce, and so they can stretch from, you know, if you're looking at John Lewis and purchasing something online from John Lewis, all the way down to your local takeaway, or the video seems to be working fine at our end. Yep, there you go. There's Mandy checking it. Yeah, so the transactional websites, but also what you can have. So those are kind of like your top kind of layer, kind of e-commerce sites. But you can also have smaller websites, smaller personal businesses, which you can transact on. You can sell goods and services on a very small website, a kind of personal website, almost a small business website. It doesn't have to be, you know, the takeaway at the end of the end of the street.
Yeah. And there's also shops within shops now. So if you go to Etsy, you know, that's a marketplace for lots of homemade creations, or even eBay and Amazon are as well now. So, you know, it's almost like these massive shops within shops. And the thing to think about here as a therapist or a counsellor is, are you selling anything? So, you know, are you selling your services, as in an hour of your time for a session? Or are you creating courses or workshops, and that might be the intention in the future? Or do you have a free meditation that you might want to download? Because that would mean that there might be some shop functionality that you could use on your website. And so, you know, when we think about the Amazons of the world, that's one thing. But, you know, almost these really big companies have paved the way for the small businesses to be able to download a plugin, which we'll talk about later, and really start selling things almost immediately, or even, you know, giving them away if you want to give them away. So the next type of website is what we call a magazine or a brochure site. And I was trying to think of an example of these before, because most websites now are kind of a mishmash of the many different types. But from a brochure site, it might be that someone's done a portfolio of art. So you can't buy it, you can just look through it. It might be that, let's say, for example, the newspaper sites, so the Times or the Guardian, the Independent. So you can go and you can read news articles, and there's usually a paywall somewhere which takes it into a shop site. But with a brochure site or a magazine site, you are presenting something for the user to learn from or to find out more about. And generally these sites are rich in visual content. So it might be a video, it might be lots of really nice images, and there's also going to be text, you know, that what we'd call copy in the web world. So they would be rich in content and be visually appealing.
And they'd also get updated on a regular basis also. And
yeah.
That's, you know, that's one of the kind of features that pulls people back time and time again.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last one, in case you can't guess, is a landing page. And so a landing page is generally, or can be, just a single page. It doesn't even need to be a website. It can just be a single page that is going to offer you something, maybe like a sleep meditation, for example, and it's going to ask for something in return. So it's going to ask for an email address so that you can subscribe to a mailing list or something like that. And so if you've ever gone to through an advert to a website and it says, oh, you know, get this 10 top tips to build your private practice, you generally land on a landing page. And a landing page is very limited. It won't have a lot of navigation. It won't allow you to go into the rest of the site, because the purpose of a landing page is to get you to fill in that box. That's all it's going to let you do. So
yeah, it's just to capture their details.
Yeah. And so any website can have multiple landing pages. So Soulful Psychotherapy, which is my page, has a landing page for a sleep meditation. It also has a landing page for tips for anxiety. But if you were on my website, you wouldn't see those landing pages because they are for specific adverts. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So kind of hidden.
Yes, hidden in the background, but still doing a job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm hoping Vicky can get sorted with the technology. I'm sorry you're having trouble. So just a little pause. Okay, so Marion's just asked a question. Would the e-commerce one be best for private practice or a mixture of landing, etc.? Well, I'd say for mine that my site is primarily a brochure site. So it's primarily information about me and who I am. No, it's fine, don't worry. It's about me and who I am and what I do. And then after I'd done that, I added a bit of e-commerce on because I want to do these downloads. And then I added a landing page on. So I think you have to decide for your business what's most important. You know, if you're selling wax melts for Christmas, hi Vicky, I'm glad you're back. You know, if you're selling wax melts for Christmas, it's definitely an e-commerce site that you want to do because you want to get the sales up. We're nearly at Christmas. But if it's private practice, I imagine that a brochure site is going to be the main, is your starting point. Let's say that.
Yeah.
Your starting point.
Yeah. That's the start. I think that's where you started, isn't it, Mandy? Where you just started with a kind of brochure site, then you've expanded and added other elements onto it.
Yeah.
And it's having those options about being able to add these things onto it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people get overwhelmed when we think about websites because you think about Amazon or what have you, and they're huge. You can start with a single page website, and we'll talk a little bit about more of this in a minute, but having a one-page website, which mine is, it's a one-page website with some links to a booking system to book an appointment. And really, you just need to decide, well, what's really important? What do they need to know about me? What kind of questions are they going to have? Which audience am I speaking to here? Can they get in touch with me? And they're the key things, really. And so I'd suggest you start small. Just pick something that's going to be quite easy to do. It's not going to overwhelm you. And then you can add to it. And part of the discussion we're having about audience and goals and everything is this is an ongoing thing. So it's not necessarily a case of throwing a website up there and never touching it again. As Neil says, with a brochure site, it's about going back. It's about updating your COVID guidelines or, writing a blog post about surviving winter or, creating content that's going to keep people engaged. Okay. Does that answer your question, Marion? That was a bit of a long-winded answer. I think I asked you the question and then you asked me the question and I've answered it. So so if we were to start building a website, it's a bit like a recipe, okay, good. So it's a bit like a recipe. The main ingredients are have a domain name. So a domain name is the address that you type in. So amazon.com is a domain name. soulfulpsychotherapy.co.uk is another one. definitemedia.com is another one. The domain name is the thing that someone types in to find you. And it's usually the address that you put on your business card. That's the way that people get to where you. And Marion's got hers, that's great. The next thing you need is somewhere to host it. So those servers, those boxes that we were talking about before, you need some space on one of those. And you don't have to have a physical space and you don't need a web server in your back bedroom. In fact, I'd advise against that because you don't want to maintain it. But there's lots of places on the internet where you can buy some hosting space. And I always think about it as like, if you're gonna build a house, you need the land to build the house on. That's what I kind of think web hosting is like. You've got to buy the land. And then the domain name is the address that the postman uses to find that land. And then the content is the bricks and the mortar that, you know, that hold it all together. So if you've got these three things, or you're starting to get them together, you are well on your way. Would you agree, Neil?
I would. Except just remember, it's always a lease thing. You lease the domain name, you lease the hosting. It's never a permanent thing, and you need to really pay attention to those kind of domain name renewal notices, etc. That, you know, they come in once. It's only once a year, but it's really helpful to have a handle on those, and to remember to pay attention to them when they do come in.
And it's all important to note as well that these are business costs. So, you know, everyone thinks, oh, domain names, it's only a tenner, it's quite cheap. Well, it's a tenner a year, and it's an ongoing cost, you know, and the hosting service, whichever one you go for, which you can pay between £5 a month and £50 a month, depending on what platform you use. Again, that's a business cost. So it goes in your tax returns, it comes off your, you know, your profit and loss. And the creation of content too. So if you're whether you're creating content on a platform like Canva, which, you know, we won't go into today, but if you're using a pro account somewhere, which is £11-12 a month or something like that, then that subscription can go against your business costs as well. You know what I mean? If you use a graphic designer for your logos, again, that's part of your business cost. Yeah. Okay. So if you've got those three things, that's great. Oh, I've missed a slide out.
I think you have.
I have missed a slide out. I don't know how I've missed a slide out, but basically, I know why. Because we were going to talk about the icing on the cake, and then I thought, no, I'm going to leave that for a later week. But I forgot to tell Neil.
Good, because I can't see the notes either, just so you know.
I haven't got any notes, I'm winging it. Okay. So, yes, we were going to talk about other things you can have, but we'll do that a bit later. So, because we get carried away and we'd be here for hours, wouldn't we? So that's why I took it out. So we're going to talk about platforms. Now, a platform is basically the thing that you use to build the website. And here are some examples. So Wix is a popular one. I love Wix because it's really, really visual. Neil hates it. WordPress is another one, Squarespace. Then you've got some kind of industry specific ones, so Web Healer and Health Hosts, who kind of target therapists and clinical practitioners. And then you've got other people like GoDaddy and 123Reg, which kind of started out selling domains and have spread out to now allowing you to develop websites. And so it's discussion time now. So the first thing I would say is you can either take a holistic approach and say, right, I'm going to go with Wix for everything. I'm going to buy my domain name. I'm going to do the hosting. I'm going to, you know, and you have one account and it's pretty easy to manage. Or you can say, I'm going to go to GoDaddy for my domain. I'm going to go to Mellow Hosts for hosting. And I'm going to go to WordPress for building the website. And that is entirely your choice, really. You know what I mean? So we want to look at the pros and cons of these, and the ones that we're going to do are mainly, I would say, Wix and WordPress. They're two of the biggest ones. They both have the pros and cons. Do you want to? So in terms of transparency, Neil is a WordPress super fan, and so I almost want to ask him what the cons of WordPress are, because he knows all the pros straight off the bat. Do you know what I mean? But I won't do that because that's cruel.
I think it's a really fair question. I think that the cons for WordPress are that you need to keep it updated, really. I mean, you need some good, solid hosting. You need to keep the WordPress software updated That's, for me, is one of them. It's not an issue, but it's one of the things which you need to be aware of. And to be honest, I think that as long as if you've got a WordPress website, it's well maintained, so you log in on a regular basis and update the underlying software, and the hosting is good, then it should work absolutely fine. And there aren't many cons. The cons are that, there aren't many.
Yeah, I think
it can be complicated for somebody people get very confused with it and just start going, oh, but I don't know any programming languages. And you go, well, you really don't need to.
No.
You just need to know how this block fits with that block and that block and that block.
It is like building a Lego castle, isn't it?
Yeah.
In terms of the front end, which is what we talk about when we talk about what you see on the web page. And I suppose for me, I've used Wix. I've built websites for other people using Wix, and I've recently converted to using WordPress because Neil admired the life out of me, and obviously he's got a very good platform for doing that. And so Wix is great because it's quite a user-friendly interface. It can be fiddly, but it's quite a user-friendly interface. And they've added all kinds of other things like, how you manage your customers and all that type of thing. And the thing that appealed to me about Wix was they have a huge amount of stock photographs, stock videos, so it's very visually appealing. But what a lot of people do is build the website and leave it. Don't engage with it. WordPress, for me, they all take a bit of learning. They all take a bit of getting used to. It's like anything when you learn something new. And WordPress, for me, I picked it up quite quickly. And theme 2019, very good. So Vicky's got WordPress. So WordPress, for me, has many bonuses. So Wix, for example, you can put a bit of metadata in, which is what the search engines use to find your websites. But Wix websites historically don't rank well on search engines. So you can build a fantastic website, but you've got to pay for ads to get it higher up the rankings. WordPress is I'm going to let you talk about WordPress and ownership because you do it so well.
Okay, well, just with reference to search engine optimization and WordPress, WordPress was started by, it was a community. It's a community that own it. It's not an individual or, several individuals. It's a community. There's a community of million plus people who work using WordPress, who develop the underlying software itself and also develop plugins for it. And so there's a whole ecosystem has developed around it. So it's not just here's Wix and it's one company and it's earning lots of money. It's a lot of people earning smaller amounts of money. So what was the question?
So when we were talking about this the other week, Neil and I often have heated debates about things. It was databases the other day, but so when we talked about Wix and WordPress, and I said, so tell me why are you such a fan of WordPress and against some of the other big corporates, if you like?
Yeah.
And your point about ownership kind of really struck a chord with
me. It is. It is that kind of thing. Yeah. So there is that kind of generally it's that kind of community ownership of a community project. So it's a bit like, like a Medicine San Frontier. I can't even remember. I can't even pronounce it correctly.
Or Wikipedia or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. It's, yeah. And it's one of those kind of organisations that's there for the good of humanity almost. So there's that kind of ownership of it. But then also, if you're looking at WordPress, Then if you download WordPress, you can download WordPress to your machine that you're working on. You can build your website on your machine if you wish. You can set it on, if you had a server in your back room, you could set it on the set it up in the server in the back room. You can even set it up to work on a thumb drive, USB drive, and you can have a website just on your USB drive. So you can do lots of different things with it, and it's very adaptable. And if somebody has built a WordPress website on a server with a hosting company in one place, and so I had some early doors, I had some websites on a hosting company in the US, WordPress websites, and I went, okay, I don't want to host them there anymore. I actually want to bring them here, and I want to host them in-house. And so it was very easy for me to be able to take those WordPress websites and actually just host them in-house. I couldn't do that with something like a Wix website or a Squarespace website, because that's theirs. That's theirs. I don't own. It's not community owned, so I couldn't take those with me. I could move the domain name to point elsewhere, but I couldn't take the work that I'd put in on those websites and take it with me, which I can do with WordPress.
Yeah, and that portability is important. You're welcome. That portability is important because, you know, what can happen and what has happened in recent times is, you know, I've done it. I've got websites with loads of different providers. I've got one with 123 Reg, and I've got websites all over the place. And then what you'll notice with some of the big corporates, and I'm not slating them all, but you know, you start paying £3 a month, and then it's £4 a month, £5 a month, and then it's $6.99 plus VAT. And what was kind of started out as kind of a cheap investment is now creeping up rapidly. And unless you know how to, so with 123 Reg, for example, I've got to rebuild the website. I cannot export because it's done in their builder, and the same for Wix and Squarespace. I can't export what I've done. I can copy it. Like I can copy the content and, you know, paste it into a WordPress site, but that's quite an arduous task in itself. And so that's something to be considered. Especially if you're doing this yourself, it's something to be considered. And even if you were going to get someone to build it for you, if they built it in WordPress, and let's say, for example, you know, I've had a few conversations with people in the last couple of weeks where they've had a conflict with their web designer. You know, they've not been able to agree on a working way forward. And so if that was the case and you had a WordPress website, you could extract that, download it, and go somewhere else and upload it, and Bob's your uncle, off you go. That's not always the case with some of the other ones.
No, it's not. It's true.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about. It's about easy in, easy out. Put that kind of portability. Somebody's doing something for you. I mean, lots of the people that I've worked with in the past, they've got, it's somebody's friend from down the road. Their nephew is building it, and you're just kind of going, okay, well that's not a problem. If it's WordPress, it's dead easy to get hold of and just copy it across and just go, okay, well now it's yours on this server here. Yes,
yeah, and so that work that's been done is not lost. You know, it can be enhanced and iterated and improved.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's important, and it's good. I think, you know, it's good for people to have ownership of the websites that they create, in the sense that that's something that belongs to you, and it's something that you have an investment in. You know, we can. It's easy to pay a web designer to do something for you. And if I design websites for people, I always train them in how to manage it. I always give them a handover document, because I don't want them to rely on me. I don't want them to have to keep coming back and paying me to do it. You know, it's not that difficult. There's a few key things they need to learn, and if they can learn them, they're self-sufficient. And that means that, you know, if 20 past midnight you get a sudden urge to write a blog article on, I don't know, lockdown 2 and Christmas, you can do it, and you can press the publish button, and you are not reliant on anybody else to do that.
Yeah, and that's really important. That's the way that WordPress was developed. It was developed so it wasn't, you know, developers, you know, as sitting in their ivory towers, he said.
Yeah.
That were building websites, not so ivory. But it's about people being able to publish their own content.
Yes.
And so, you know, you can get, you know, a WordPress app just for your phone, where you can sit there and you can be sitting, you know, well, you can't sit in a queue of traffic and touch your phone anymore. But
if you're a passenger.
If you're a passenger, or if you're on the train, or you're on the bus, then you can sit there and you can just, you know, take a photograph, and you can type on your phone, and you can post to your own website, you know, easily like that.
Mm-hmm.
The way that, you know, Facebook took a lot of the good things from WordPress and improved Facebook in order to and improved Facebook. So it took a lot of those features from early WordPress.
Yeah, the commenting, the discussion, all of that type of stuff. Yeah. So I'm conscious that I don't want to bang on and on and on about WordPress.
You're conscious that we're running over again.
Well, I'm conscious that we're running over again, but I'm conscious that we're evangelizing WordPress when it's not the only thing out there, and I've used many others. And so the important thing for you to think about is how can you develop, knowing what you now know, how can you develop your marketing plan further? So have you got a domain name? Marion has, that's great. Have you got some hosting set up? If you have, that's great. And then have you decided on a platform that you're going to use and why? And so in that marketing plan, you know, you can say, I'm going to buy a domain name if you don't have one. I'm going to look into hosting by next Friday. I'm going to choose this platform and why. And so, you know, that helps you to really take ownership of the basics of this, that, you know, the main part of the recipe. Do you know what I mean? And so what we're going to be doing next week is about content creation and content grading. And that's where we start to look at, okay, so you've got the domain and the hosting and the platform, you've got the foundations. What's the kind of icing on the cake? How are you going to decorate it? Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So is there any questions?
You say, as both of us stare at the comments box.
Looking at the comments box, yeah. Is there any questions? The deathly silence. We've talked you to sleep.
Vicky wants to add blog page, but she's frightened of breaking her site. I think Vicky's got a WordPress site.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think Vicky and I have had a conversation. I think I have reassured her that it would take a hammer to break it. But it's about having the confidence to do that, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, you know, we'll work towards that as we go through December. We might even get to a point of looking at WordPress in the back end.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of very easy things that we could do.
And there's some great YouTube videos as well.
Yeah.
You know, there's a mass of information. So, yeah, great stuff. So everyone's happy. That's good news. And I will send out an email kind of towards the weekend with a reminder of the homework. And so that I know some people will catch this on replay. I know Geraldine's going to catch this on replay. And so we will see you next week. We have to do the Zoom wave. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, Vicky's just saying she feels reassured. That's good. I'm glad that's what we want to do. Yeah. I need to find the button. I always do this every week.